To order, and would you join me in the recital of the pledge? Of the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Denise, would you please call roll?
Certainly. Good afternoon, everyone. Chairman Clark,
Here.
Board Member Bonagowski, Board Member Willett, Board Member Maleko,
Here.
Alternate Board Member Tony.
All right. Well, now I need a motion and a second for the approval of the March 5th, 2024 meeting minutes. But prior to that, are there any questions, corrections, or concerns with those meeting minutes? Hearing none, can I have a motion and a second then?
I will make a motion to accept the minutes of the March 5th, 2024 regular meeting of Board of Adjustment.
And I'll second that.
Okay, great. Denise, will you call roll?
Board Member Willett,
Aye.
Board Member Maleko,
Aye.
Chairman Clark,
Aye.
Alternate Board Member Tony.
Okay, well, I now open the public hearing for the setback variance request, case number VAR 2024-001, and the provisions of the city municipal code, and in particular Title 17 thereof, the subdivision regulations and comprehensive plan of the city of Canyon City are incorporated in the record of this hearing and set forth verbatim. Okay. Patrick, can we have a staff report?
Certainly. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Adjustment. I note that the applicant isn't here, so for your information, I have just sent an email to the applicant. My worry is that he might have thought the meeting was at 6 p.m. rather than 4 p.m., so I'm hopeful that he may show up while we are in process. In any event, if I could have my PowerPoint pulled up. That's not the one.
He needs help, Patrick.
Board of Adjustment, click on Board of Adjustment, 2024 meetings, and then today's date. Okay. This afternoon, we are sharing. Share screen, click share screen. This afternoon, we are here to consider a variance request filed by the owner of the property at 312 South 10th Street. The nature of this variance has to do with a minimum setback requirement for side yards within the I Industrial Zone District when adjoining a residentially zoned lot as specified in Section 1703-010, Table B. We are having technical difficulties,
I
it
see
seems.
that.
Just tell me when to click next.
Okay. Next, and click twice. Again. Okay, the property that is the subject of this request is located at the southeast corner of South 10th Street and Water. South 10th Street and Water Street. The address is 312 South 10th, and it has retained an I industrial zoning for some 60 years or more. Given its proximity to the railroad, the industrial zoning makes sense. Indeed, vast portions of Canyon City along the railroad corridor through town share an industrial zoning. 2 more clicks. There we go. Okay. The site currently contains 2 structures, an office and a Quonset hut used for storage. Both structures front South 10th Street, given the lot's orientation towards South 10th. The date these buildings were constructed on site is unclear. The assessor's records aren't definitive, but staff estimates they have been there since the 1950s or 60s. Also of note is that the lot fronts South 10th. The property line on the south is considered to be the side lot line under zoning. The neighboring property to the south is zoned R1, low-density residential, and it contains an existing dwelling unit. It is unknown if this dwelling is currently occupied or not, but it does appear that construction of this dwelling unit also appears to date back several decades. Now, it is the fact that this property is adjoining a residential property that has prompted the applicant's variance request. The property owner has expressed an interest in constructing a second storage building on the vacant portions of the lot to the rear of the existing buildings. Under the I Industrial Zoning District, as shown in Table 1703-010B, when industrial properties abut other industrial properties, the side yard setback is 10 feet. When industrial properties abut a residentially zoned property, that side yard setback increases to 25 feet. This is the nature of the variance request under discussion today, a relaxation of the minimum setback from 25 feet to 10 feet. This is not an unusual form of variance request to take. In evaluating setback relief questions under variances, staff examines 2 particular factors: the potential for land use conflict and what precedents may already exist that address the setback question. Now, the applicant has explored an option for construction that would comply with the 20-foot minimum setback. While such an option exists, there are some issues that this will raise. The applicant's narrative, he expressed that a shift of the building to comply with a 25-foot setback would adversely affect parking on the north side of the building. It will also cause operational constraints with the railroad with respect to current building configuration, and it will affect how deliveries of equipment and material will be managed. Staff has also noted that there is a precedent to be considered in this evaluation as well. Both the existing office and Quonset hut have existed alongside the dwelling unit on the adjacent property for many decades now. If this proximity were going to create a land use conflict, that conflict would certainly have been discovered at some point in the last several decades. No such conflict has been identified. The analysis regarding the variance confirms the lack of land use conflict in this situation. Now, with that, staff has found that no unique conditions exist with respect to anticipated impact on neighboring properties. Both the industrial use and residential use have coexisted for several decades. The construction of a second storage building, which has the same general setbacks as the Quonset hut, is not anticipated to create a land use conflict. To the extent that this variance amounts to a difference from the requirements of the UDC of 13 feet, 25-foot minimum minus the requested 12-foot minimum, this does not appear to be an egregious request. A precedent already exists on this site between the existing Quonset hut and the neighboring dwelling unit. The Quonset hut is already less than 25 feet from the neighboring lot and has been for several decades. The existing relationship between the industrial character of the use at 312 South 10th and the neighboring residents is not anticipated to be adversely impacted by the construction of a second storage building on the subject property. Also of note, no referral agencies have expressed concern regarding this variance request. So with that, staff recommends that the Board of Adjustment cite the 2 findings of fact as included in the staff report as a certification of Canyon City's jurisdiction to act on the variance request for a relief of minimum setback requirements under the I Industrial Zone at 312 South 10th Street. Following a public hearing on the variance request, To hear not only from the applicant, but also from any concerned citizens, staff recommends that the Board of Adjustment approve the variance request to allow a 10-foot setback, or in this case, a 12-foot setback, for the proposed accessory building at 312 South 10th Street. That would conclude the staff presentation. As always, I'm happy to answer any questions that the Board of Adjustment may have. I am worried that the applicant may be under the impression that this meeting was this evening, not this afternoon, so.
The residents were given notice of this hearing, correct?
By notice requirements,
Turn your
all
mic.
residents within a 300-foot radius of the property that is the subject of the variance were notified by mail, yes.
Right, with no response.
We received no responses.
Thank you.
Well, I did have a question of the applicant, but since you guys have had a conversation about this, what is the issue with parking that was mentioned in your summary of this?
Mr. Tezak did not elaborate on that. I don't know if it had something to do with easements at that portion of the lot or not. I don't know that parking, I don't know exactly how parking would be affected. My tour of the site showed that there was a fence along that northern boundary where it bordered Water Street. So I'm assuming if there was going to be parking there, they were going to have to make some sort of a cut in that to provide access. But I haven't seen anything in the way of a parking plan for how they would manage that yet.
Well, that would come later anyway, after we did this, wouldn't it?
It would generally form part of a site plan, yes.
Right. Okay, well, I normally ask if there's any input from the audience, but they're awful quiet today.
I have questions of Patrick.
Go ahead, yes.
Do you know the height, or, I mean, and actually this would be the applicant, but do you know what the height is of the building that he's proposing?
I do not. I have not seen an elevation of the building he's proposing to build. The height limit under the I industrial zone, and if you give me just a second, I can tell you that.
25 feet.
1703. The maximum allowed height under the I industrial zone would be 100 feet. I don't believe they're going to do that. My conversations with Mr. Tezak were that it was going to be similar in height to the Quonset hut, so maybe 2 stories.
2 stories? Then we're talking about a 27-foot setback instead of a 25, correct? Because for anything over
yes.
1 story, it's an additional 2 feet.
Mhm.
So what would you say, in your opinion, would be the reason why we have a 10-foot setback next to residential rather than a 25?
I think what the ordinance is doing is anticipating the potential for land use conflicts. Industrial uses tend to be very intense in their nature. They tend to have a lot of activity. They tend to generate a lot of noise. And if you can separate the buildings far enough away, you mitigate some of those impacts to a neighboring residential property. Now, it's interesting to note that when a residential property abuts an industrial, it does not have a reciprocal setback that says, okay, where residential abuts or aligns to an industrial, it's got to have this increased setback. So it's assumed that the conflicts are going to be coming from the industrial piece, apparently. What I would say is the conditions that exist on the ground out there have been there for the better part of 60 years.
But at 20 feet, not at 10, because you're basing the 10-foot or the 12-foot based on a portable storage container. The Quonset is 20 feet from the property line, not 10 or 12.
Well, yes, the existing building, it's skewed slightly, so at its closest point, it's about 18 feet from the property line.
But not 10 or 12.
It is not 10 or 12, no.
I mean, I think that the justification for the precedence was kind of loosely based on the fact that that Connex was almost 12 feet from the property line, and I just don't think that the portable shipping container should be considered in this, as it's, first of all, it's a temporary structure, and also it's only 8 foot tall. So that's where I could see, maybe justifying a 20-foot setback because the Quonset already 20 foot, but I just can't see going 10 or 12.
My only point was the Quonset hut is already within that 25-foot setback.
Okay. And then how long has the applicant owned the property, do you know?
Oh, goodness. I don't know how long he's owned the property. I would have to guess he's owned it for decades as well.
Okay. Right.
So our thought on the shipping container, for a lack of better words, is kind of a moot issue since we're already inside the 25 feet?
That was my thinking when I did this. The Quonset hut has already set the template for the fact that it is within 25 feet. And it's also going up almost 2 stories.
Okay. Any other questions?
Well, I walked out there, and it looks like if he has any type of drive and an entry into that new building, he's gonna have to have some setback for parking, I think.
Well, and
I think it's an
yeah, that was,
driveway issue.
that was what I was asking earlier about the parking issue, because I did visit the site myself, and I was trying to determine what that conflict was gonna be. And yeah, I agree, there may or may not be, but it's hard to tell at this point, because he's not here.
So Patrick, excuse me, I'm sorry, Patrick, if I'm reading this right, the house is to the long side of that lot, correct?
Well,
Which would be the south side?
In the picture you're looking at there, the
Right.
house is actually closer to the southerly lot line with the neighboring lot south of it. There are 2 Connex containers in that aerial photo. That aerial photo is from 2022, that are not there. When I visited the site for pictures a few weeks ago, those Connex containers are not there.
So if I'm seeing this right, based on the diagram kind of being kitty corner here, the setback we're talking about is the one on the long side of the building, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, but based on his requested configuration, that also, he's pushing that, well, I guess that would be the east side of the lot, pushing that one closer to that side, and there's no conflict in the industrial zone there on the,
There's another metal building there, another storage.
Yeah, there are existing buildings on the other side of that lot line to the east.
okay,
And that would be considered the rear, and that only requires, where it's abutting industrial, a 10-foot separation.
okay.
Can we either advance or back up a slide to where it shows the entire aerial shot of that property? Because I thought we had one that was just plain.
This one here?
No, the one he's got up right now.
Oh, that one here?
Those are the buildings to the east of it.
Oh, okay, yeah. So that east side, there's no conflict with the setback on that if he moves that over according to his requested. Those are both industrial pieces of property.
In fact, the industrial zoning starts here and wraps all the way around, going down to, I think it's Vine? What is the industrial, what is the next street
I
down?
think it's Vine.
Yeah, I can't remember.
All of this on this side of the block are R1 low-density residential.
Okay. That answers that question.
Now, the industrial property to the east of that is, remind me what that is.
You're talking about 303 11th right there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
That is actually a repair yard associated with the Royal Gorge Route
With the
Railroad.
railroad?
okay.
You frequently see, they have their engines go over there. And if I had more of this, you would actually see they've got the rails going through 11th Street for, their engines to cross the street.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns, thoughts?
And as far as you know, that, what is that, 314 South 10th Street, that's an unoccupied residence at this point?
I know 316 South 10th Street is an occupied residence that's owned by the former county attorney.
Right.
314 South 10th, I think it's also owned by Ms. Jackson, and I think it was a residence for her mom for a while. I don't know if it is currently being resided in now, but it has been resided in the past.
Okay.
I guess if the applicant was here, I'd ask, couldn't he build a slightly smaller building? Because it seems to me he is kind of creating the issue himself by building a large building. So I'd like to know if that was an option.
I think that's a perfectly fair question, and one of the options that you have this evening is to continue this. We can schedule a meeting to a date certain and have him come back and make an appearance before the Board of Adjustment if you'd like. That is one of the options that you have.
If we explored that option, what date would we be looking at?
The next meeting would be,
So it'd be our next regular meeting?
we could do it to our next regular meeting, which would in fact be August 6th, or you could schedule a special meeting if you wanted.
When would a date be available for that?
Generally speaking, if you do it on Tuesdays, this room is available.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say this, I tend to agree with you. There's a couple of questions I would definitely like to ask him, and that is, one of the thoughts I had too, is this a self-inflicted wound here for the request on this variance, but we don't know the answer to any of that. We can't have a discussion on it because the applicant's not here. And I understand that might have been confusion.
And I have been checking my email. I have not gotten a response back from him, so I do not have an answer as to where he is.
Okay. Well, let's do this. If there's no other questions or concerns or anything, why don't we close this public hearing?
Can we continue the public hearing rather than close it? There's kind of a big distinction between the two.
So does everybody want to continue it?
Basically, we'd be continuing it
Well,
to
right.
be able to hear from him. So it'd still be open until we've heard from.
So let me correct myself.
Okay.
We will table this and continue this public hearing at a later date to be determined by whatever the calendar will allow us.
You can set the date either for your next regular meeting, which would be August 6th, or you can schedule a special date. Just, that's a majority vote for you folks.
Regular?
Or could we,
Well, we got to have a regular meeting normally anyway. Or would.
well, if this was the only thing on the agenda, whether we continue to a couple weeks to the next regularly scheduled or pushed it over until our September schedule, when I don't know. I don't know his
What do you think?
circumstances.
I'm just down the street, doesn't matter to me, we
Yeah.
can meet every day if you want. It's-
We're not going to do that, Aaron. I'm just going to let you know that. Well, I'm going to say this.
I'm good with either.
I think probably at this point, we got 3 and a good 4 if he wants to contribute to that date. I think we'll just set this off to their next regularly scheduled meeting.
That would be August 6th.
August 6th,
Yeah.
okay.
I do believe I'm here, but I'll double check that. But no matter what, somebody can always fill in for me.
So can we have a motion and a second to continue to August 6th?
I'm just going to ask for that.
Thank you.
So can I get a motion and a second to continue this hearing to our next regularly scheduled meeting date of August 6th?
I'll make that motion to continue, and August 6th is the date.
And I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Denise, will you call roll?
Board Member Tony? Board Member Maleko?
Aye.
Chairman Clark?
Aye.
Board Member Willett?
Aye.
Okay. At this point, anybody have any announcements, questions, concerns? We were going to contemplate having elections since Randy left, and we have the vacancy. If he would have been the only vacancy, as far as not at the meeting, we could have voted or we could postpone it. At this point, we're short one more person. So you guys just think we ought to postpone the elections until our next
Yeah.
meeting?
Patrick, has there been any movement from the city council on appointment to the vacancy?
Council is aware of the fact that we've gotten the vacancy. We got the resignation letter from
Randy.
Randy explaining he was leaving both Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment. It has been advertised, and I think what's going on is the city clerk is going to compile all of the, letters of interest and resumes or whatever, and take them to council and let council decide. I do not know how many interest letters she's gotten about the Board of Adjustment position.
When's the next council meeting?
August 5th.
So we could potentially, well, we wouldn't have that person here by the 6th, though.
Probably not.
Well, I'm gonna say this, in my opinion, I think we ought to set the elections off. Everybody agree with that?
Yes. I agree. I
Okay.
agree.
I think at this point, we're just gonna set the election off till the next meeting and see where we land on, as far as members being present to have a vote.
I think that's why we put it over to this meeting to begin with, because not having the position filled and not having enough people here to,
I think that was one of the reasons
Yeah.
we did that. The other one's
Aside
the
from
lack of number of days we meet.
yeah.
Okay, well, in that case, I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.